Holy Gospel according to Luke. On the way to Jerusalem, Jesus was going through the region between Samaria and Galilee. As he entered a village, 10 lepers approached him. Keeping their distance, they called out, saying, "Jesus, Master, have mercy on us." When he saw them, he said to them, "Go and show yourselves to the priests." And as they went, they were made clean. Then one of them, when he saw that he was healed, turned back, praising God with a loud voice. He prostrated himself at Jesus' feet and thanked him. And he was a Samaritan. Then Jesus asked, "Were not 10 made clean? But the other 9, where are they? Was none of them found to return and give praise to God except this foreigner?" Then he said to him, "Get up and go on your way. Your faith has made you well." The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, O Christ.
We've heard a great deal lately in the past few years about boundaries. And while I believe some boundaries are necessary and very needed, even extremely healthy, I also believe that far too often we impose boundaries and build walls not only to keep others out of our lives, but also fence us in, isolating us from our others and from the world. And quite frankly, too often, as we have seen in our current political climate, we simply draw a line in the sand, create unreasonable boundaries, and then refuse to cross those lines to seek common ground. When we meet up with Jesus today, he is continuing his journey to Jerusalem, which means it is his journey to the cross. And he and his disciples, as they continue that cross-bound journey, move into a border area, the boundary between Samaria and Galilee. This was a very scary boundary for people, and it was a very uncomfortable place. It was a boundary the Jewish people did not like to cross because it took them into that place where those hated and despised Samaritans lived. And look who Jesus meets at the border. 10 lepers who raise their voices and cry out to Jesus, saying, "Jesus, Master, have mercy on us." These lepers, knowing they are unclean, keep their distance from Jesus because that is what the law stipulates. By law, they cannot go near those who do not have leprosy. Enduring those labels of outcast and unclean, they are required to live apart from the rest of society. They are required to live within yet a different kind of boundary, one that keeps them totally estranged from all others. Considered ritually unclean, they were quarantined and treated as objects of revulsion and fear on the part of their neighbors. So as these 10 lepers cry for mercy, not one of them breaks the social conventions that surround the disease as they cry to Jesus from a distance. The writer of Luke's gospel tells us Jesus sees these lepers and tells them to go show themselves to the priests. This was required by law because the priests would have to inspect the lepers and verify their cleanliness. Only then could they be readmitted to the temple and be freed from their status as unclean. So they go, and while on their way, they become clean. All 10 are healed. But only one comes back to say thanks to Jesus for healing. This one leper, when he realized he had been healed, turned around and came back, shouting his gratitude and glorifying God. So why did only one leper return to offer thanks? part of the answer, I believe, is to be found in the identity of this healed man. He alone is identified as a Samaritan. He was considered an outcast not just because of his disease. He was considered an outcast because he was a foreigner, a disgusting, hated Samaritan. As such, he was twice scorned, twice rejected, and twice removed from community. It really is interesting that this despised Samaritan is the one who stops to say thanks. The writer of Luke's gospel again chooses a Samaritan to make a point. And as he does, we can be pretty sure that his point is not about the proper etiquette for saying thank you. Luke is not giving a first century listener a lesson in proper protocol for having received healing. No. Again and again, we find Luke's Jesus teaching in parables and living in ways that disorient his followers with the shock of something new. Again and again, Luke's Jesus shows the people that God is close, at hand, in your neighbor, in those you don't consider neighbors, in an act of compassion, and in a touch of healing. So why was it the Samaritan who came back to thank Jesus? Jesus had not made a formal thank you part of the bargain. He simply told them to go and show themselves to the priests. We really do not know why the Samaritan is the only one to return. However, just maybe the writer of Luke was more interested in describing the boundaries, or maybe should we say the lack of boundaries, when it comes to God's grace. You see, when it comes to God's grace, imposed boundaries will ultimately expand to include even those the world defines as unclean, immigrant, alien, foreign, impure, LSGBTQ, whatever category we put people in, God's grace surrounds them. Luke seems to be telling us a story about a very daring boundary crossing, a crossing that is daring on the part of Jesus and also on the part of the Samaritan. So the Samaritan alone returns, and if we look at his posture, we discover that he comes close to Jesus and humbly lies down at Jesus' feet. Of the 10 who were healed, he alone, a despised foreigner, breaches the boundaries and moves from an experience and life of isolation to one of grateful intimacy. While the other 9 perform the necessary rituals and practices, he alone feels obliged to say thank you. And maybe, just maybe, in his need to say thank you, there was a yearning for intimacy with God, a sense that faith cannot simply mean performance or ritual. You see, faith requires relationship. Faith, something that in itself is all gift, lures us, grasps us, and draws us into relationship with God, a relationship that is healing, intimate, humbling, and yes, even dependent. I cannot help but wonder if part of the illness we are seeing within today's culture and climate is due to a deep self-centeredness, a viewpoint that assumes we are right, that assumes we are entitled to what we have. We draw deeply entrenched boundary lines, and we do not want to cross those lines. We become so preoccupied with our own needs, our wants, protecting what we have while attempting to justify our unwavering position and perspective, that we maintain our distance from others while holding on to this illusion of absolute independence. In doing so, we create divisions among people, cast others aside as unclean, and attempt to make others appear as outcasts. Then one of them, when he saw that he was healed, turned back. One turned back from maintaining the protection of distance, turned back from going his or her own way, turned back from self-justification, turned back from the illusion of independence, and knelt down at Jesus' feet, proclaiming ultimate dependence on God. And in doing so, gave thanks and showed deep gratitude. Gratitude. You know, the truth is, gratitude is an expression of our need for others and of our need for God. We cannot live within our deeply entrenched boundaries, live at a distance, and become truly healed at the same time. It's not possible. And the fact of the matter is, all that we have, all that we think we are entitled to, all our stuff, our health, our position, our jobs, our families, the list goes on and on. All of it, every single bit of it is gift. And when we begin to grasp and understand that all is gift, we then begin to know gratitude. And it is gratitude that teaches us about the truth of our very lives, the truth that we live in a profoundly interdependent world. The strength and health of our communities, our country, and our very selves comes to us as a gift when we live in relationship to others. You know something? The healthiest people I know are those whose lives are not lived as the self-made man or woman, living within their own protective boundaries. The healthiest people I know are those whose very lives express deep gratitude as they have reached across boundaries to enrich and embrace others and to be embraced by others. The healthiest people I know are those who understand that to be truly well requires the embrace of the alien grace of Christ's daring love, the embrace of the God who crosses all boundaries to love us where we are and as we are and make us God's own. Amen.